Have you ever seen the Facebook posts? They're very
Where the wedding ended.
cows are for edibles and grass or something, right? Isn't there?
But I just think it would be really great. Like a steamed cow, like a special cow.
No, that's not that summer. That summer
That's true.
Jones, did you ever get pictures of this? I heard it was on Instagram, but I missed it. There's some pretty cute. Guess what?
Guess what? You mentioned it.
No,
People say, oh, what do you like to do?
Oh, really?
Do you want to do it? You can do it.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't mind doing that.
Maybe just one set up here too.
I had to make posters, not official ones.
Oh, okay.
You're like, we're just having our own trouble.
Oh, that's not almost
I was like, great, I got this. Posters I can do.
Yeah, right? Sounds like that. I can't really.
We'll just continue with the first way.
That's fair. I was using this morning, and I was like, my fingers are too small. And then someone was like, you can do that on your computer. Yes.
I sort of go with it. Where's the strategy?
Excellent.
I sort of keep an eye on it.
So what do you have on your card? Like,
I'll show you.
I do.
Then always the last 2 minutes takes about half an hour.
looks.
Not anymore, he does.
Well, it's a little bit different now.
Just like Captain Marvel next to it. Tupino, so it's Tupino. Of course,
Yeah.
Can you search
See it?
I'll show you.
Good.
There's
I really like
I met some
cinnamon.
people yesterday that had
Especially strong people.
biking and they were
I like strawberry.
Can't go wrong.
I like strawberry house as well.
on the back and we were talking to it.
They don't need that.
That's
Like just like on the bicycle. I don't know which seems better than the bar.
Yeah, really simple. Alana Hartness designed one for us.
Like 8 or 11 or something.
One where they brought back everywhere.
Remember
They were
that
really, that I didn't know.
She was in both. She was in.
No, we, there's like a little mom and pop shop in, it's called Prenting. They're a little bit more expensive, but.
They got his menu.
Yeah, so would they just. So that your designer will get that.
Right.
The only thing is that they send them off on the bus and it's a little
I enjoy it.
But it's been fun as well.
Well, just so you know, and I'll be driving back and forth every couple of weeks. And I thought that was over. I thought this summer I'd
Not so much luck. Hello.
Okay, get on to,
Oh, this is the thing.
this is it.
This is it. Just wait for that. Oh, look, there we go. It is 5:30, so welcome everybody. I will call our District of Tofino Special Committee of the Whole meeting to order at 5:30 p.m. and recognize that we're conducting our business today in 12-foot territory. And I will ask first, please, for a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. No opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Councillor McQuaid?
Yeah, I'm going to declare a conflict of interest on a close personal relationship and shared business interest for this one, so
Thank you.
best of luck to council.
Councillor Anderson?
Yes, I'm also declaring conflict of interest due to 2 applications being close proximity to my 2 business locations and also a business relationship I have with one of the applications.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Enjoy your evening.
Have a good time. For seven.
All right. So here we go. So just a couple words to the public. Thank you for being here, and of course you're very welcome to be here and watch the meeting tonight. There isn't an opportunity for public feedback or public input tonight, so you're welcome to come and go as you need to. I just ask if you have a cell phone with you, if you could just switch it off or to vibrate. If you do need to go outside and talk, that's totally fine. Please just don't do it in the hallway. If you can go outside, it's a little less distracting for us. So thank you, and thank you for being here. All right, so we're going to start off, I think, with presentations from our staff. Aaron Rogers and Elise, you're part of this too? Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a very brief presentation, just to sort of just lay out the process. Most of the report's quite detailed and has a lot of information, so we decided not to go through that in this presentation. So today we're considering some retail cannabis TUP applications. This is comes out of a policy, a framework that we've been working on since January of 2018, so for about 18 months. We've, as a community and as a district, decided to go through a TUP process for to allow retail cannabis within the community. We adopted a policy earlier this year to sort of guide us down that path. We've received 4 applications based on through our policy. Daylight Cannabis Company, Prairie Records, Tough Leaf, and West Coast Cannabis Store. These applications were in the downtown core, Industrial Way, and the Mixer complex areas of town. We evaluated the applications as per the policy. We did an initial review for completeness through corporate services, and then we had 3 staff members do individual staff evaluations on sort of the overall policy, detailed policy, and the land use. Then we had a discussion and near the end and collated the evaluations into what's before council today in your package. We also went out to the public and to the First Nations community to see what feedback was from the communities. We received no input from the First Nations and 125 responses from the general public. It appeared to us that the evaluations of staff are largely aligned with the community said in their comments. And then today in front of council for committee of the whole to move us on to the next step. So staff are recommending that 2 of the applications move forward: the Daylight Cannabis Company at 671 Unit 1 Industrial Way, and the West Coast Cannabis Store at 1182 Pacific Rim Highway. If council moves forward today, or the next step would be to actually develop the temporary use permit language. There'll be a social benefits discussion with staff and successful applicants at that time to understand how some of these may be moved into TUPs if it's possible. Following that will be a council meeting next week to endorse what happens tonight, and then notification in the Westerly News, and then following council meeting to issue the TUP. Next steps will be making sure that the applicant has provincial requirements, the TUP conditions have been met, and that the applicant, including having a business license. So that's it in a nutshell. I don't know if council have any questions.
Okay, thanks. Any questions about the process? No? Okay.
No, I do.
Yeah?
Yeah, I
Yes,
do.
please.
Thank you.
Councillor Bart.
Just was hoping I didn't have to be the first to, the only that asked. So in the report, you're talking about the Industrial Way property and saying, you know, it's fitting for a temporary use permit, but it doesn't align with the OCP. But a temporary use permit generally means a rezoning, but the rezoning ideally would be aligned with the OCP. I'm still trying to get my head around how you've kind of reconciled that.
Okay. Thank you for the question. Just to start off with the referrals and the work staff that it was a body of work. It was 3 staff members, so it wasn't just myself. I'm here right now, but it was 3 of us working on that. So just to clarify that. In terms of, so the question is how does a TUP work in incentive zoning in the OCP? So we use TUPs and zoning a lot within within our district in a way that they probably weren't designed for. So the way to think about a TUP is that it lives in the OCP to allow uses that may not be allowed in the OCP. So it should be looked as a tool within the OCP rather than a tool that works with zoning. We use it that way, but temporary use permit is actually there to allow a use that may not be permitted in the OCP. I guess it's just a difference of understanding. That's what the purpose of temporary use permit is, allow temporary use outside of what the OCP has set forward. We use them to try to bridge the gap towards zoning. We've seen it, I think as council very familiar with how we use them, but the relationship's a little bit different.
So, and that's what I'm kind of trying to get at, is if it's a bridge towards zoning, there is no assurance that there's going to be a rezoning that allows a strictly retail use on that property.
So as I said, I think until we use them, but that's not what this is, the intent of this is in this situation. So we're looking at the temporary use permit process only at this point. We mentioned it in the report to ensure that the applicant would know that the use that they're proposing may not be something that can occur there long term. I'm not sure what our rezoning process is. I'm not even sure what our next step is after this temporary use permit. We assume that we're going to go into a rezoning process. I don't know if we're going to be going into rezoning per property, if we're doing a blanket zoning for the community. I don't know what that looks like yet. We haven't really discussed it past getting TPs for cannabis retail moving.
Right. Any other questions around process or process that staff use to evaluate? Yeah.
Well,
Councillor Stewart?
it's the question was not answered by the fact that that was one of the questions. Where do we go? Because, you know, echoing what Dorothy was saying in terms of my reading of it, understanding of a TUP, I'm fairly new to that process. I understand that, but when I read through the zoning availability up there in conjunction, it is not. We would need an amendment to the OCP and a rezoning would be needed for that to move forward, even though I understand this is a TUP, but that's for 3 years with a renewability for another 3 years, potentially. But in the interim, I'm understanding that we don't have what comes after this TUP. I don't understand what would come after, because as it stands, after 3 years, they basically, according to what we have on paper, is that they wouldn't be able to proceed any further with that type of operation. Would that be correct?
Yeah, so basically, you know, at least feel free to jump in anytime. Is that we literally haven't discussed it. So what our process is going to be, I'm assuming, and again, this is just sort of in conversations with Elise and myself, is in probably a year from now, we're going to send out notices to folks who have these temporary use permits and say, you know, you've been granted it for this amount of time. If you're looking to move on with the process, you want to start thinking about zoning, and in case of perhaps the daylight application, you'll be looking at an OCP amendment potentially, or whatever else might be there. You know, once the new OCP comes out, you know, that will probably still be reflected. We're just a little bit too far out for me to guess how that's going to happen, and we're also not sure what's going to happen completely with whether the province will allow edibles and whether you'll be able to produce edibles on site, or whether those edibles you produce will be able to sell. I just can't tell you that now. I can tell you we have a process that council put in place that will allow this operation to occur at that location under a temporary use permit. What happens after that is completely up there, as it is for any of the other applications we look for today. We could have an application come with a TUP and it didn't work out for the applicant, or it doesn't work out for the community or something, and they come back in front of council and ask for rezoning and it gets turned down as well. Again, that's me talking off the top of my head without having time to sit down and talk to the other staff members about what our process may be.
Elise?
I would echo everything that Aaron just said, and just for a little bit of background about how some of these recommendations came to be, especially something, as Councillor Brett has raised, maybe doesn't fit with our OCP and zoning. The policy that was developed for council and by council specifically allowed this type of temporary use permit to be granted in an N1 zone, and that did come from several large public processes. So staff is supporting it in the context of this policy and the future, as Erin has, or as the manager of community sustainability has sort of alluded to, is unknown at this point, but in the context of the policy, that location is supportable.
Yeah, so I think there should be some comfort with this process that we've chosen, because just like Elise said, it was mostly developed in the last council term, but after we did community engagement, we had conversations with stakeholder groups, then council deliberated on this policy several times. And so we understood when we accepted the policy that yes, we were stepping outside of the OCP in the sense of industrial way and permitting the M1 zone to be a place where a person could apply for a TUP, but also that we chose the TUP process over doing spot rezonings, because I think there was some discomfort without the federal and provincial regulations being absolutely in stone, especially around some things like processing of edibles, and those things are beginning to change now, that the TUP was a method to allow us to try it out and without committing in the long run, although riskier for the applicant. Yeah, and we weighed those possibilities, and that was the decision we made. Councillor Bart?
Yeah, thank you. I know that there was a lot of public input, and the M1 zones were, the M1 zone was referred to as an ideal location. Because the people we're asking are the people who already kind of in a social sense are using that space, but we're not asking the people who may be the future cabinet makers and builders and so forth, who, you know, may have a concern if there isn't an industrial way, because we've encroached on it and impacted the sort of the market and other factors around it. And as you know, I feel very strongly about safeguarding that until the community says in its process through the OCP rewrite that they don't want that anymore. And so my question about the TUP is TUPs generally lead to rezoning, and the question I have is what kind of rezoning would it be that one would apply for on an industrial way to just have a retail store? Would it be a spot zoning? Would it be, you know, because what I don't want to see is a precedent being set that actually council has walked away from a policy that exists around the zone where it says it has a certain use and a secondary use can be the retail aspect. So how is that?
I think the first question was, again, this question about the bridge. There's only one TUP that I can recall off the top of my head in 12 years has gone from TUP to a zoning, and that was the Ice House, which was after 6 years. The majority of the remainder of the TUPs we actually don't generally fold into zonings, although sometimes they're asked to use that, and we've seen that more recently with some of the campsite areas. But again, so our passage isn't necessarily, that doesn't necessarily work in that way. In terms of a rezoning application, I would expect if it was exactly, if everything as it is, if everything was it, excuse me, if nothing changed,
All else
the application I would expect to see would be an OCP amendment to allow standalone retail use in potentially a whole industrial way area, followed by or concurrently with their rezoning application for that space. That's what I would expect to see at this point in time.
And you know, so I'll wait till the council discussion to say more about that.
Thank you. Any other process-related questions? Have a seat.
Duncan,
You do have a question.
What's your definition of a local?
I don't have
I have
one.
never got a straight answer in this town.
So
I know I used to live in Alberta, they used to say 25 years.
So you'll notice in that report that we've quoted, because that's not what we. We're just hearing what we're just communicating what we've heard. I've had the same question to council when I was asked to define a local for the purposes of our community hall, and they said we can't actually do that. It's not a definition, so I don't have one.
I do have one other question, I guess. In terms of the social benefit, you talk about measurables, or I'm talking about measurables, rather. You know, what's going to be? What's your kind of reference point for how kind of you set those terms in terms of requirements? I mean, I go back to a building that we have that had, you know, certain uses when it was approved, but then it changed its uses, you know, and there's all the goodwill that goes forward in intention, but I'm just wondering how much things are sort of prescribed in the way the license is granted.
In terms of the district's process, so not in the provincial license, the short answer is I don't know. So we have put a process in place that doesn't allow us to have much control or oversight on what social benefits is. A lot of it will be on a trust-based exercise. We'll do what we can when we have the conversations with the community, but things like ensuring someone's getting paid an accurate wage is complicated. At the very least, that's just one idea. Ensuring that, you know, an applicant's rent is being topped up, or ensuring that someone's taking a certain course. Again, if we're going to resource it, maybe perhaps, but even so, there's questions of privacy, a whole bunch of other things. So these are the type of conversations that we have with applicants in rezoning processes, and conversations we have referring back to our community amenity contribution policy. So it'll be difficult. It's kind of, once we get past this evening, then it'll be the conversation that Elise and I will be having with the applicants.
We discussed this during the policy development, and we did add a specific clause, 6.3, that throughout the duration of the permit, successful applicants are encouraged to track and publicly communicate the initiatives outlined in the social benefit statements included in their application. And I think that was a nod to the fact that that's the best we can do using this process.
Yeah, well, if it's a temporary use permit, it's in their best interest, obviously, but
Yeah.
I think so.
Councillor McMaster, do you have a question?
No, not
Okay. Okay. All right, thank you. Okay. So my suggestion to council is that we walk through the applications one at a time and maybe do a bit of a straw poll exercise, but that will save the final decision making and the motion making for the end. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So the first application then that we would consider is the Daylight Cannabis Company application.
Point of procedure. Can we move recommendation 1?
Yeah, we could. If you want to get that out of the way, we can.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if we do it now or if we do it at the end. This is for next June 11th. This is not for tonight. We don't have to move this recommendation in order to have this conversation.
Okay.
Yeah. But if you want to get it out of the way, that's fine. Tonight is committee of the whole. We're not making any final decisions. Everything will get moved forward to.
Well, we might as well get it out of the way.
All right, give her.
Okay. Recommendation 1, West Coast Cannabis Store, Daylight Cannabis Company, Prairie Records and Tough Leaf temporary use permit applications for retail cannabis operations be considered at the June 11, 2019 regular council meeting.
Seconded.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. So by passing this motion, it means that all 4 of them will be considered at Tuesday's meeting, and we'll be making a recommendation on whether to accept or deny them one by one.
Yep.
All right, all in favor? Thank you. None opposed. Motion carried. Okay, so now let's turn our attention to the Daylight Cannabis Company. And because our policy says that we will permit up to 3, we know that at least tonight, highly likely that at least 1 would be denied. That doesn't mean we have to approve up to 3. It could be 1, it could be 2, it could be 0. So when we're having a conversation about each of these applications, not only are we discussing their merits overall, and do we recommend to council that the TUP be issued, but that at some point when we get through all of them, we may be moving into kind of more of a ranking conversation, or a conversation around, yes, there are 3 that deserve merit, but we really feel strongly for XYZ reasons that only 2 be issued, or whatever the case may be. So just keep that in mind as we talk about all of them. All right. Would anybody like to lead off with the first one? Any opening comments? No, we won't put Councillor Bart on the spot.
The first one's Daylight, right?
Yes, the first one is Daylight.
I guess just
Please.
pertaining, sorry.
Yeah, no,
pertaining to what we
go
talked
ahead.
about earlier, is that I feel comfortable with the industrial way TUP being safeguarded for the zoning, that it is a risk that the applicants are aware of. And by moving it forward, we're not saying that we're comfortable with it becoming retail, but it allows them to kind of figure out their business and what changes will come, so I'm comfortable.
Okay, thank you.
I have to say I was very impressed with the application, and the reason I brought up the procedural questions is I do see some potential problematic issues surrounding later on in the process, which hasn't been defined. I thought it was very thorough. They addressed all of the issues that we had talked about. The public comments were supportive. So in general, I was very impressed with the application and the social benefits and everything that was in it.
Okay, thank you. So comfortable moving on with that one?
I am comfortable.
In today's conversation so far?
Correct.
Okay, great. Councillor McMaster?
Yeah, I thought it was generally a good application. I think it was possibly the only one that addressed the social benefit. And yeah, I could support this. I'm a bit worried about, as I am with some of the others, about the lack of experience. But I don't know how much experience is actually needed to run a cannabis retail outlet. So.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Councillor Bart.
Yeah, so I think it was a very good application. I, would like to support it. I have some questions about the housing side of it because, and this is maybe a bigger discussion, but when housing is offered, is it just that it's existing housing, so, other people are displaced and then it becomes housing for the project? Or is this new housing, or is it somehow supporting housing through the Tofino Housing Corporation, or an amenity or something? I don't know the answer to that, so I'm kind of interested in that. For social benefit, there isn't really anything here that I wouldn't expect from normal business practice. So it wins me less in that front. But I've talked with the applicants over time, and I think their intentions are really good. But I'm more interested really in the measurables, because, as I've said all along, I see this as a new industry, and it's an industry that is requiring social license, and I think there's a quid pro quo on that, and the social benefit is a piece that captures that, and it's not strong to me. However, I want to support it. I just wish there was a way to capture that, this temporary use permit, or even the retail use in that industrial zone. I could qualify support of that in the understanding that, federal regulations may change in time and allow for sort of processing and things to go on there that make it now a fit. And so I don't want to preclude that possibility. But if something like that isn't forthcoming and it isn't a fit with the OCP and its intention when we get through that process, then should I be here for the renewal, which I don't think I would be, I wouldn't support it then if I haven't seen some movement. But I don't want to stand in the way of this business, because I think it does qualify, and I think the evaluation of staff supports that. But I am a very reluctant supporter of this in the sense of those two considerations.
Thank you. Anything else anyone wants to add on this one? Or we'll move on to the next one. Great. All right, so the next one is the West Coast Cannabis Store, and this is one at Units F and G on 1182 Pacific Rim Highway. Councillor Steer?
Well, someone's got to start. Once again, I have to say there was zero red flags on this one. For me, it was well put together. It's obviously been well thought out. I don't really have much to add other than I'm very supportive of the applicant in this situation.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it was a good application. It was almost a little too slick, actually. Yeah, I mean, I'm not too keen on the location, because I've complained about the potholes in that parking lot enough, but that's not my concern.
Is that a joke, Councillor McMaster, the potholes?
I picked
I
up
knew
on
there
it.
was going to be at least one pun tonight, but I don't think that was
I've
it.
been working on that for weeks.
Yeah.
No, I thought it was a good application. I wasn't too happy on the social benefit. As I said, I thought the other one we just reviewed, daylight, was the best social benefit. And I say I have no idea what the social benefit should be because we've never done this before. We have nothing to judge it by, so you know, I don't see anything why I shouldn't say this is a reasonable application.
Thank you. Councillor Chalmers?
I agree with both councillors already. I thought a little bit more about this one in regards to some of the feedback about the location and the children and all that, but I think the location upstairs and the lack of signage, I think that covers it quite comfortably for me. And again, with the social benefit, I mean, we don't really know what we're asking, so it's hard also to expect too much from them, but I thought it was a good effort and I'm comfortable with this one too.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and if we were to say there was only one applicant that we would support, for me, at this time, it would be this one. I thought the application was outstanding, it was well thought out, there were tremendous references and a lot of detail around their kind of engagement with the community and the degree and level of support that they envision as a part of their whole corporate identity. And so from the social benefit side, I felt quite differently than Councillor McMaster. I thought it was very strong, and yeah, so just everything about this was highly impressive to me. I really liked it very much.
Thank you. Okay. All right. You guys are making this a little too easy.
Do you have some thoughts?
Nothing new that hasn't been said. Thank you. Okay, so let's move on then to the Prairie Records application at 154th Street.
Well, I actually like this just from the idea that they're actually in the business and they've done it, and I found some people I know in Alberta and there's been no complaints. So to me that was a good track record. I also like the fact that we do, is an application that is downtown. I don't think, if we're going to allow these things, I don't think we should just be throwing everything out into the hinterland. So I think if it's we're viewing this cannabis retail as an acceptable business, I don't see any reason why there shouldn't be one downtown.
Okay, thank you.
I didn't love their application. I didn't think they hit the social benefits at all. I think, as a lot of comments made, that the mean living wage, like it felt a bit like a cop-out. I don't love the location on that corner right now. It's really busy. There's daycares. There's, yeah, I agreed with the staff in not recommending it.
Thank you.
I have no comments other than it was not one of the ones that I would have fully supported. There were location being one of the issues, somewhat confusing in the intent of the record retail sort of end, and wrapping my head around that, the proximity to the public school. So there were some location issues around it, but in my mind of the applicants and that were there, it wouldn't have ranked in my top two. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. I agree with staff recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah, it just didn't hit the marks for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think this is where the 3, 2, 1 will come in a little bit more. Okay, let's just consider the last one here before we start considering how many or what, and a little bit more in the trade-off side of things maybe. So the Tough Leaf application at 561 Campbell Street.
Took me as much time to turn this down as it did to read their application.
Okay.
Agreed. Councilor McMaster?
I would accept staff's recommendation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I accept staff's recommendation, but I do want to make a comment because in the feedback, and I'm kind of directing this to staff, there were characterizations of the applicant that were direct and personal and based on race, and I was very uncomfortable with it, and I just don't feel like I can go past that without mentioning it. I don't know what in our communication policy and stuff, how we address or deal with that, but you know, it was very unfortunate. I'm sorry it happened. I didn't care to even see it. I know that's out there, but, you know, and it might not have even been ill-intentioned, but it was ignorant, for sure. And I'm just concerned about it.
Yeah. Councillor Bart and I discussed this a little bit before and thought it was worth flagging for staff and asking what is the district's policy with respect to receiving public input that may be racist in nature or personal in nature in a way, and where does the right to speak your mind, where do other things supersede that? And we don't know, and we don't know how this works with local governments, and we thought maybe Elise might have a little insight.
I don't think it would be a communications policy that we would go to. I think there's some best practices that maybe we would want to have a look at, and generally we shouldn't be republishing anything that's libelous.
Yeah.
And in addition to, you know, I've read through the comments today, and in addition to the comments that Council Barrett has flagged, there were a few others that, you know, while individuals aren't named, it's not too hard in a small community to figure out who's, you know, being talked about in sometimes a less than flattering way. So I think that there's a bit of there's some learning moments from this in terms of, you know, republishing things verbatim, and we may want to not publish them widely, but at least make council aware that those are the kind of comments that are out there, so that there's sort of fullness. But yeah, I think we'll have a look at what goes out in a public package for future reference.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's good. Okay. I'm not hearing much support, if any, for this particular application. And although it, you know, hits the minimum mark and worthy of consideration, I would completely agree with what I've heard. So, all right. I think it's fair then to go now to the fact that I think there are 3 that council, or that this committee anyways, is deems worthy of consideration, and a conversation around whether we are interested in going forward with 3 or just 2 or less than that, even just 1. And as we do that, to start talking a little bit more about the trade-offs between the different applications. With the 3rd application, the one, the Prairie Records application, there's a little bit of a mixed feeling. I think some are more comfortable moving forward with it and others less. But I'm wondering also how much is factoring into people's minds around a sense of wanting not to issue the maximum number, which we set at 3. So
I'm not inclined to issue 3.
Not inclined. Okay. Yeah, I agree. I'm not either. But is anybody? No. Okay. Yeah. To my mind, there's just still a little bit too much uncertainty with what Tulaquit First Nation might do and other impacts like that could affect the success of certain businesses here, and as well as them. And when it comes to social benefit and thinking about where you can make the most impact with profit from a business like this, or any business, I personally feel that I want to give First Nations every opportunity to be an equal player in this field. And so although we have no say over what they do on their land, it's important to me to consider the fact that they may wish to open a store. So I think we don't have any firm knowledge on whether that'll happen or not, but I think it's likely.
I tend to favour just issuing 1, as this is a new learning experience for us, but I'll be swayed by the rest of council.
I would have difficulty in 1 as virtual monopoly.
Right.
And so that would be tough for me. Although my heart would move in that direction, understanding the realities of the business world. I don't think that would be. So 2 would be my maximum.
I agree with Councillor Steer. I'd like to see 2 for the same reasons.
What say you, Councillor Bart?
Well, I see 2 applicants that I find supportable, but one that's very problematic for me. So I know for sure that I can support 1. I guess in terms of the temporary use permit, you know, just have to kind of surrender to the fact that we're in this process of the OCP review, and just know that if the applicant gets this temporary use permit, that they do so that there's no assurance that if the OCP comes up in a really solid way, that they necessarily are going to be able to have that location if they're only a retail outlet. You know, the concern I have underneath that is that oftentimes we approve things and then they drive our decisions later. It's because that's done, now you make a certain kind of decision. And what my concern is that the decision will be made to open up Industrial Way to retail because we've made this decision and it's the direction, as opposed to really seriously looking at, you know, Industrial Way. I have to visit a woodworker in our neighboring community and punch in the address. Oh, of course, it's up in Industrial Way. That's where it would be. You know, if we don't have that in Tofino, that's, you know, there's a whole segment of economic development and security and so forth that I think we're kind of jeopardizing given land prices and so forth here. So I will approve the recommendation tonight. And I know this has been on the books. I will wrestle with it. I'll talk to the applicants or whatever has to happen then, and staff before the council meeting.
Okay. Okay. Anything else?
I agree with Councillor Barrett that TUPs will drive the decision on the OCP. I mean, we've seen it before in the past. It's just unfortunate. Maybe that's the way it should be.
All right, so I think I see where this is going, and where I see it going is I think this committee is interested in proposing that council issue a temporary use permit to Daylight Cannabis Company and to West Coast Cannabis Store, but not to the other two. This is my straw poll time. Okay. So the final thing I think I want to say is that I agree with this. The interesting trade-off to me is the fact that the Daylight Cannabis Company, one of the things we heard from the stakeholder group was concerns around the co-location of alcohol and cannabis. And so there's a proximity issue that that particular application has that none of the others have in the same way. And that the concern that Councillor Chalmers flagged around, and it was echoed in the public comment, just around the exposure of the West Coast Cannabis Store in a very, very busy location that has a lot of families and everything. But I think these are both things that we're, through the TUP process, able to get some experience with, as well as the applicants are able to get some experience with. And that, I mean, I think that this town has decided a more cautious approach than almost any other municipality, frankly. So whether that's good or bad, time will tell, but I'm really comfortable with it so far. So I think I can live with this the way that this is. We have a lot to learn. And we're likely to have some successful applicants to help us learn. Okay, so let's turn our minds to the recommendations there, because I think our recommendations align with the staff recommendations. So would somebody like to? Don't read. Councillor Chalmers doesn't want to read. I get it. Councillor Steer?
You want to read all of the recommendations?
We'll just start with the first one.
Recommendation that the West Coast Cannabis Store, Daylight Cannabis Company, Prairie Records. We've already done that, sorry.
Yeah.
Now on to number two, thank you. That staff be authorized to notify the public that council proposes to issue a temporary use permit to Daylight Cannabis Company to operate a temporary retail cannabis operation at 671-1 Industrial Way.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any final considerations or thoughts? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. None opposed, motion carried.
That staff be authorized to notify the public that council proposes to issue a temporary use permit to West Coast Cannabis Store to operate a temporary retail cannabis operation at units F and G, 1182 Pacific Rim Highway.
Second. Thank you. Any final comments or thoughts there? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. None opposed.
That council deny the temporary use permit application for cannabis retail use for Prairie Records at 150 4th Street.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any final thoughts? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Councillor McMaster opposed. Motion carried.
And that council deny the temporary use permit application for cannabis retail use for Tough Leaf at 561 Campbell Street.
Thank you.
Sure.
Moved and seconded. Any final thoughts or considerations there? All right, all in favor? Thank you. None opposed. Motion carried. Okay, any final thoughts on the process from anybody? Or, nope. Okay. I just want to say then, thank you to our staff for a lot of work that got us to this point, as short as this meeting may have been. And I also want to say thank you to all the applicants for putting in some really high quality applications, and I think especially a couple of them really meeting the spirit of what we discussed and asked for around social benefits, and we look forward to seeing where this goes. So, all right. Then with that, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. Thanks for coming. Beauty split. Wow.
Oh, that's quite painless.
I was really wanting someone to say what a long, strange trip it's been.
I was going to wear my Grateful Dead shirt.
Strange truth.